The Young and the Restless spoilers. Billy's revenge. A dangerous bargain with Ian Ward. Billy Abbott stood on the edge of a precipice, both literally and metaphorically. The icy wind swept through Genoa City, but the cold in Billy's heart was far more chilling. His hatred for Victor Newman burned with an intensity that consumed him, an all-encompassing desire for revenge that left no room for reason or restraint. Victor had taken so much from Billy, his pride, his peace, and his sense of purpose. And now, as failure after failure mounted, Billy felt like a man unmoored, drifting in a sea of rage and despair. But even as his anger grew, so did his sense of inadequacy. He lacked the power, influence, and cunning to topple a man as formidable as Victor. It was a reality that gnawed at him, feeding the bitterness within. Jack's doubt and Billy's isolation. Billy's brother, Jack Abbott, was one of the few people he could turn to, but their relationship had always been complicated. Jack, the ever-pragmatic leader of the Abbott family, viewed Billy's vendetta with skepticism, even disdain. "You're obsessed, Billy," Jack had said during one of their many arguments. "Revenge won't fix anything. It won't make you whole." But Billy didn't want to be whole. He wanted justice, or at least his version of it. Yet Jack's lack of support cut deep. To Jack, Billy was little more than a reckless, impulsive man who couldn't stay out of his own way. And the truth of that judgment stung. Billy's repeated failures had left him with a reputation as a man without honor, a perpetual disappointment who couldn't finish what he started. That perception, whether fair or not, fueled his desperation. He needed to prove himself, not just to Jack, but to everyone who doubted him. And most of all, to himself. Ian Ward, the devil's deal. It was in this state of vulnerability that Ian Ward found Billy. Ian, the manipulative and cunning cult leader, had a knack for identifying broken souls and exploiting their weaknesses. His approach was calculated, his timing impeccable. Ian appeared to Billy like a shadow in the night, his voice smooth and persuasive. "You hate him," Ian said, the words dripping with venom. "Victor Newman has taken everything from you, hasn't he? Your dignity, your family's respect, your sense of worth." Billy stared at Ian, his jaw clenched, his fists curled tightly at his sides. "What's it to you?" he snapped. "I know what it's like to be underestimated," Ian continued, undeterred. "To feel powerless against someone who thinks they're untouchable. But you and I, Billy, we're not powerless. We just need the right strategy." Billy's curiosity got the better of him. "And you've got one, I suppose?" Ian smiled, a predator sensing its prey. "I can help you destroy Victor. Bring him to his knees. Make him pay for everything he's done to you." There was a catch, of course, there always was with Ian. He wanted Billy's allegiance. Ian framed it as a partnership, but the reality was clear, he wanted control. Billy would be little more than a pawn in Ian's larger game. "You'll be my apprentice," Ian said. "Together, we'll dismantle Victor piece by piece. But you must follow my lead, my rules. No exceptions." For Billy, the offer was both tantalizing and terrifying. The chance to exact his revenge was almost too good to pass up. But it came at a cost that felt increasingly irrelevant in the face of his hatred. "I'll do it," Billy said, his voice heavy with resolve. "Whatever it takes." A dangerous alliance. As Billy and Ian began their uneasy collaboration, the question lingered, could Ian truly trust Billy? Billy's fiery temperament and unpredictable nature made him both a valuable weapon and a liability. Ian knew that loyalty from Billy would only last as long as their goals aligned. The moment Billy sensed betrayal or defeat, he would turn. But Ian wasn't concerned about Billy's betrayal, at least not yet. He saw Billy as a desperate man, willing to compromise his morals, his dignity, even his humanity to achieve his goal. And Ian thrived on desperation. He fed on it, molding it into a tool for his own purposes. Billy's inner struggle. For Billy, the alliance with Ian was a double-edged sword. The deeper he waded into Ian's world, the more he felt himself losing grip on who he once was. Ian's methods were ruthless, his plans cold and calculated. While Billy had always been impulsive, there was still a part of him that clung to the idea of fairness, of right and wrong. That part of him was fading fast. "Do you even recognize yourself anymore?" Jack's voice echoed in Billy's mind, a memory from a recent argument. The words haunted him as he stood on the brink of becoming something he had always despised. The path ahead, the question remained, would Billy become a monster to destroy one? Would his hatred for Victor consume him entirely, leaving nothing but a shell of the man he once was? Or would he find a way to reclaim his sense of self before it was too late? As Ian's grip on Billy tightened, the stakes grew higher. The line between ally and enemy blurred, and the cost of revenge became increasingly steep. Genoa City was on the verge of witnessing a battle of wills, one that would leave no one unscathed. Billy's journey was far from over, but one thing was certain: by aligning himself with Ian Ward, he had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. And in doing so, he had set in motion a chain of events that would change the lives of everyone in Genoa City forever. Ian Ward's calculated game: allies or pawns? Ian Ward was not a man who acted without careful calculation. For him, every move was part of a larger strategy, and every person he engaged was a potential pawn in his game. He knew that if he was to dismantle Victor Newman and take down Newman Enterprises, he couldn't do it alone. Yet, as with any alliance Ian forged, trust was never truly part of the equation, it was always about utility. A question of allies: should Ian reveal his plan to Jordan? Jordan was a wild card in Ian's mind. While she had shown potential in the past and had skills that could be useful, Ian's instincts told him to tread carefully. Trusting anyone too soon, especially someone as unpredictable as Jordan, could be his undoing. Sitting in the dim light of his secluded hideout, Ian mulled over the possibilities. Should he bring Jordan into the fold, or was her involvement too risky? He needed someone with her connections and cunning, but she was also a liability, a person who could just as easily betray him if it served her own interests. Ian tapped his fingers rhythmically on the table as he considered his next move. Bringing Jordan into his plan could strengthen his hand, but he would need leverage, something to ensure her loyalty. And Ian, being the master manipulator he was, already had ideas on how to secure her obedience. "Jordan will want something in return," Ian murmured to himself, a sly grin spreading across his face. "And I'll make sure she gets just enough to think she's in control." But in Ian's world, no one was ever truly in control but him. Billy's dilemma: loyalty to a monster. While Ian was plotting his next move, Billy Abbott found himself wrestling with his own demons. His alliance with Ian was supposed to be the key to his revenge against Victor Newman, a chance to finally destroy the man who had caused him so much pain. But the deeper he delved into Ian's world, the more uneasy he felt. Billy had always been impulsive, but he wasn't blind. He knew Ian's reputation, knew the kind of man he was dealing with. Ian Ward wasn't just a manipulator, he was a predator, someone who thrived on chaos and destruction. Aligning with him was a dangerous game, and Billy couldn't shake the feeling that he was being drawn into a trap. Still, the temptation was overwhelming. Ian's promises of victory, of watching Victor's empire crumble, were too tantalizing to ignore. For Billy, the thought of finally getting what he wanted, of seeing Victor suffer, was worth almost any price. Almost. "Do I trust him?" Billy asked himself as he paced his apartment. The answer was obvious: of course not. Ian Ward was the last person on earth he should trust. But did he really have a choice? Without Ian's resources and cunning, Billy knew his chances of defeating Victor were slim to none. Ian's shadowy approach. Ian was well aware of Billy's doubts, but he wasn't concerned. In fact, he counted on them. A desperate man like Billy was far easier to control when his emotions were in turmoil. Ian had no intention of offering Billy true partnership or loyalty. Billy was a tool, a means to an end. Sitting across from Billy during one of their clandestine meetings, Ian leaned forward, his piercing gaze locking onto Billy's. "You want revenge, Billy," Ian said, his voice low and hypnotic. "And I can give it to you." But revenge comes at a cost. Are you willing to pay it? Billy hesitated, his jaw tightening as he searched for the right words. I'll do what it takes, he said finally, though the uncertainty in his voice was impossible to miss. Ian smirked. Good. Because once we start, there's no turning back. The consequences of betrayal. Both men knew the stakes. For Ian, bringing Billy into his plan was a calculated risk. If Billy's doubts grew too strong, he could turn on Ian, potentially jeopardizing the entire operation. But Ian was confident in his ability to manipulate Billy, to keep him tethered to the cause just long enough to serve his purpose. For Billy, the alliance was a double-edged sword. He understood that Ian was using him, just as he intended to use Ian. But the price of revenge was becoming increasingly unclear. What would he have to sacrifice to achieve his goal? And when the dust settled, would he even recognize himself? A dangerous game as Ian considered whether to involve Jordan, and as Billy wrestled with his own morality, one thing was certain, the stakes were higher than ever. Ian's plans were shrouded in secrecy, his motives known only to himself. Bringing in more allies like Jordan could strengthen his hand, but it could also introduce new risks, risks that even Ian might not be able to control. For Billy, the question loomed large. Could he remain true to himself while aligning with a man like Ian Ward? Or was he destined to lose himself entirely in his quest for revenge? As the pieces moved on Ian's chessboard, the game grew more dangerous. Trust was a luxury no one could afford, and the line between ally and enemy blurred with every passing day. Genoa City was on the brink of chaos, and the choices Ian, Billy, and Jordan made would shape the city's future, and their own, for years to come.